He left me with no explanation. I sat on the porch for the last time. I had just finished loading all my belongings into the car. There were 2 cardboard boxes and 2 suitcases. Most of the other things I had gotten rid of in the last 6 years. I didn't want to take anything beyond the essentials. In my purse was a copy of the final divorce decree and a check for half of all our possessions. I saw my now ex-husband, John Simmons, sitting quietly in the living room watching television. He didn't say goodbye and didn't seem to have any intention of doing so. That was even better because I don't think I wanted him to. I got my maiden name back by filing for divorce. Now I was Gene Parsons again. I had waited 6 years for this day. It was the day my youngest daughter Sarah left for college. It was my commitment. We had 2 children, and Terry, the oldest, left 2 years ago to attend college. Sometimes it seems like I messed up just yesterday, and sometimes it seems like it's been forever since I messed up. John and I met 20 years ago. I was working as a waitress at a diner, and John was a regular customer. He was a heavy equipment operator, bulldozers and the like. He was big and strong, not bad-looking, very polite, and seemed to like me. I was still worried about the failed high school romance. Ray Cotton and I had a very tumultuous affair that lasted through my last years of high school. When Ray left for MIT, I was devastated. He came back that first summer and we resumed our love life. But that was the last time I saw him. I had heard that he had left for Seattle after graduation, but I had no confirmation of that. I was heartbroken. He was the love of my life. The only guy I had ever loved or would ever love had dumped me without explanation. When John asked me out, it was the first time I had ever been with another man. John was a good man, and he was a pleasure to date. He was never overly frank with me or tried to force me to do anything. It was obvious on several of our dates that he wanted to make love, and eventually we did. Shortly afterward, John asked me to marry him. I wasn't really in love with John the way I was with Ray, but I could see that he would be a good provider and husband. I married John for all the wrong reasons, and it wasn't fair to him. Terry and Sarah came into our family soon after, and everything was peaceful, if not exciting, until Ray Cotton came back into my life 6 years ago. I was in the supermarket just buying some little things when I heard a familiar voice. Gene Parsons. Is that you? I turned around and my heart skipped a beat. I felt like I hadn't felt in almost 15 years. It was Ray Cotton, and he looked better than ever. He was a little older, a little heavier, but just as handsome as I remembered him. I was still mad at him for leaving me, but all those feelings disappeared as soon as I saw him. Hey, was all I could say. I stood there looking at him, not knowing what to do, but knowing what I wanted to do. I felt a strange sensation in my stomach. My head cleared up a little, and he finally spoke. You look wonderful, just as I remembered you. I wanted to say something witty, but all I got out was, thanks, you look good yourself. Ray waved toward the patio, and we both headed that way. What can I get you to drink? A Diet Coke would suffice. I sat and waited for him, trying to think of what to say. There was so much I wanted to know, but I didn't want to pry into his personal life. I felt young and nervous. Ray came back with the drinks, and we talked for almost an hour. We got up and walked out of the mall together to his car, a big yellow Hummer. I said it was awful, and we both laughed. What we did was not discussed. I just got in the Hummer like it was a normal thing to do. We drove to his motel, and I walked him to his room. We never said what we were going to do. We just moved around like it was something we did every day. As soon as we were in the room, we were immediately in each other's arms. It was like high school. It was like the last 15 years had never happened. I had no thoughts about my husband, my children, or my life. At that moment, I didn't care. We both laughed heartily. I teased him about his waist getting wider, and he asked where my small, firm breasts had gone. It was all a lot of fun, and we ended up doing what young lovers usually do. Ray and I showered together, and he drove me back to the mall. We didn't say goodbye. I just quietly got out of the Hummer at the back of the building and walked away. I finished my shopping as if I was walking on air. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed up all night thinking about what a wonderful day I had had. At home, I created the illusion that everything was normal. I tried not to feel too happy or frivolous. I tried not to look guilty. I was careful to make sure nothing had changed. I made sure that nothing had changed in my sex life with John. I wasn't overly anxious or demanding. A family should remain stable. However, that was the only thing that remained unchanged. For the next 3 weeks, I spent every spare minute with Ray. We only met during the day when the kids were at school and John was at work. I didn't see him on weekends. I would drive up to the mall, go in the front, and come out the back where Ray was waiting. We always lived in a motel for the first week, and after he got an apartment, we went there. I was so engrossed in what I was doing that I didn't think about my husband or kids at all. I loved them dearly, but at that moment they were second to my pleasures. I was wrong and I knew it, but I didn't care. The downside was that my relationship with Ray had no end goal. Where were we going and how long were we going to do what we were doing? We didn't think beyond the next day. Then it came to an end. Ray and I met up, and instead of driving to his house, we drove to Lake Winona, where we used to park a lot when we were kids. We parked on the back shore of the lake. It was quiet and secluded. In no time at all, we both stripped off our clothes and were in the back seat of the Hummer. We were doing it like a couple of teenagers when my cell phone rang. I waited for it to ring a few times and then picked it up. Hi. Gene, it's John. Yes, John, I recognize your voice. Where are you right now? I was quiet for a second, not knowing what to say. I was a lousy liar. I'm in the parking lot at the supermarket, John. Why do you ask? Uh-oh. Well, that's good to know, Gene, because in 10 seconds, Ray Cotton's Hummer is going to explode into a big ball of fire. Good thing you're not there. John, what did you say? John? 10, 9, 8, 7. I dropped my phone. Get out! Get out of the car right now! Now! Ray was stunned. What are you talking about? What's going on? I opened the door and jumped out completely naked. Ray followed me and we both ran away from the Humvee. A few seconds later, there was a loud pop, and orange smoke billowed from underneath the yellow monster truck. We were standing about 15 feet away from the smoking Humvee when John pulled up in his pickup truck. He opened the passenger door and told me to get in. He looked at Ray through the window and said, "Next time, I'll see you at your funeral." For the whole long drive home, neither of us said a word. When we pulled up to the house, I had to walk from the driveway to the front door naked. I stood in the middle of the living room, afraid to move or say anything. John finally turned his attention to me. Go take a shower and put something on before the kids got home from school. It had been a busy evening. John didn't say anything to me about it. I went to bed, scared to death, and John slept on the couch. The next morning, when I went out to get the paper, I found my purse and clothes in a paper bag by the front door. I put them out of sight when John came down for breakfast. Before he left for work, he carried a box spring and a queen-sized mattress into his truck. When he got home from work, he had 2 twin beds with him and several changes of linens for them. He made the beds and I put up new sheets. This went on for almost a week. One evening, when the kids weren't home, I got up the courage to talk to him. John, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? He didn't say anything, but he took a second to pull away from his reading. I waited. I didn't apologize. I didn't make excuses. I didn't whine or whimper. I just waited for him to respond. My first impulse was to just kill you both. I was furious at what you'd done to my family and to me. I had planned to just put 4 sticks of dynamite under his truck, but then I thought about what that would do to the children. They would lose not only their mother, but their father as well. My revenge wasn't worth it. I put a marine flare in there instead of dynamite. I was waiting for you to put an end to it, but you never did. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm still angry and I fight it every day. I don't know what I'm capable of when I'm in this state. I sat quietly, listening to every word. I didn't say anything and tried not to show any emotion. John continued. You will stay here in the house and act as mother and wife until both children leave for college. You will perform all the duties of a wife and mother except for the sexual ones. This includes cooking, cleaning, laundry, shopping, and attending all social events. We should always be a normal family. Neither of us will say anything to our family or friends about what happened. I will pay you an allowance of $200 a month for your expenses and, of course, all the money you need to run your household. The day Sarah leaves for college will be the day of our divorce. I will give you half the value of the house and half of our savings. I won't pay you alimony. It was like jail time. I didn't know what to say. I sat there stunned. Why didn't he just throw me out and set me free? Why is he subjecting me to this torture? John continued, I'm doing this mostly for the children. I want them to have a normal childhood, and I'm not going to let your cheating ruin their lives. I insist on that, Jean. There's nothing to negotiate. I know this is going to sound very harsh, and it will probably be hard for you to accept, but please listen carefully to the last two conditions. They are very important. I was a little worried, but I've decided I can handle it. If you leave before your commitment expires, I will hunt you down and kill you. If you have any contact with Ray Cotton at all, I will hunt you down and kill you both. I was stunned. I couldn't find the words. I sat there trembling. I didn't realize how much I had hurt this man by making him hate me so much. I finally felt some remorse for my actions. I had been cocky and arrogant in my affair, and now I was scared and worried. He had figured out how to get to me, and it had worked. I stood up and looked at him. I agreed. That night, I cried until I fell asleep. The next morning, I started honoring my commitment and did so for 6 years with no complaints. I looked out the window again. John was still watching television. Heading to my car, I didn't know if I was relieved or just desperate. I drove slowly across town to my rented cottage. It was small, but cozy. Most importantly, I could afford it. I had messed up my life and paid for my mistake. John was a good man and deserved better than I had given him. I was ashamed of what I had done to him. However, it was time to start over. As I turned onto the street leading to my new home, I noticed a car parked in the driveway. It was a big, ugly yellow Hummer. I first met Jean at the diner where I ate lunch every day. She was bright and cheerful. I looked forward to meeting her. Jean was a pretty girl and popular. She was the type of girl I usually wouldn't even consider dating. I was a large, though not fat, unassuming heavy equipment operator, and she was Miss Personality. I never thought I'd have a chance to date a girl like her, let alone marry her. It pained me to work up the courage to ask her out. Rejection would crush me, even though I was used to it. Eventually, I asked her out and she said yes. For several years, Jean had been dating a guy named Ray Cotton. She and Ray seemed to be very close, but at some point he lost interest in her and just disappeared. For a long time, she was heartbroken, and I was kind of trying to help her come to her senses. I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I didn't really care because I was just happy with the way things worked out. The dates we went on were really boring. I didn't have any experience with that sort of thing, and I was very careful not to make any mistakes that could ruin our relationship. Of course, I had never made love to a girl or even done anything serious, so I was pretty damn clumsy in that regard. Eventually, with a lot of help from Jean, we did make love. Everything I knew about it, I learned from Jean. I think I was a good student. I know I was enthusiastic. I tried my hardest to meet any demands she might have had in that area. My only goal in life was to make her happy. It took me a long time to work up the courage to talk to her about marriage. Jean, would you consider moving in with me? John Simmons, are you asking me to move in with you or marry you? Anything you like would be fine with me. Do you have a preference, John? Well, yes. I'd like to have children, and I think it would be better if we were married. But I don't want to rush you. It's an important step, John. Can I have a few days to think about it? Of course. I don't think you should rush into it. It's an important decision. It wasn't a good sign for me. I felt bad that she wasn't confident enough to answer yes or no right away. I had no choice but to give her the time she wanted. Why did she have to think about it? I wasn't happy about it, but I had no choice but to hope for the best. 2 days later, Jean accepted my marriage proposal. We were married for 14 years and had a son, Terry, and a daughter, Sarah. My job was going well. We had a cozy home and lifestyle. I thought everything was perfect. All the anxiety I had experienced at the beginning of our marriage was gone. I no longer felt like someone on the sidelines. Even though we didn't have a romantic life like they show in the movies or cheap romance novels, I still thought everything was good. It was then that Jean started acting a little differently. I couldn't say anything definite, but something wasn't right. The house wasn't neglected, but I knew things weren't as they should be. I called home a few times during the day just to chat. The kids were at school. Most of the time when I called, John didn't pick up. She went shopping once a week, and now it seemed like she went shopping every day. She didn't really like shopping, whether it was for food or clothes. After about a week of this crap, I decided to do something about it. I took a week off from work. I would leave in the morning and park further down the street so I wouldn't be seen. Jean would get in her car and drive to the supermarket. I would watch from the parking lot, and it would be hours before she got out and drove home. I spent 3 days on this. On the 4th day, I followed her to the mall. She entered the main concourse and went out the back door. I tried to follow her, but it was too late. The next day, when she parked at the entrance, I pulled in behind the mall and waited in a secluded area. A few minutes later, Jean got out and headed for a big yellow Hummer. She got in the passenger seat and they drove off. I was in no position to follow them and immediately lost sight of them. My suspicions were confirmed. The worst thing I could have imagined had happened. I was crushed. I have a fiery temper, and I had to do my best not to lose it. I had to remain calm about the whole thing. It promised to be difficult. The kids and I were home for the weekend, so I was sure she wasn't seeing him. I arranged to take the following week off. I don't know if I just wasted 5 days or if it wasn't a wasted 5 days. Over the weekend, I kept my cool. Monday morning, I parked behind the supermarket in a spot where I could be seen from, but not so that others could see me. I borrowed a Ranger pickup from a friend at work. A Hummer pulled up, and with the help of my trusty binoculars, I memorized the license plate number. I remembered the exit they used from the mall parking lot, so I positioned myself nearby. I did better this time. When they exited the mall, I followed, and 10 minutes later they pulled into an apartment complex. They entered one of the buildings together. I had no intention of going to his apartment at that moment, but I had a lot of new information to process and some plans to make. Of course, we all have friends in some position of authority who can supply us with a license plate number. The yellow Hummer belonged to Ray Cotton. What a surprise. After 14 years of marriage, the asshole shows up in my life again. My rage was building. I spent the next day at home trying to figure out what to do. I had 2 wonderful children who had no idea their mother was a cheater. I didn't want them to find out. Whatever I did, it had to be done in a way that would keep the kids out of harm's way. I could make fear and rage work for me if I controlled myself. I was big enough and could be threatening if I needed to be. One way or another, I had to end the affair and make it appear to the children that nothing had happened. Divorcing Jean at this stage would not have accomplished what I wanted. Killing Jean or Ray wouldn't have accomplished anything. I had to force Jean to stay and continue to be a wife and mother until the kids went off to college. I decided to do it with fear and intimidation. It wasn't in my nature, but I had to try to make it look believable. First, I had to get their attention. My original plan was to put 4 sticks of dynamite under his Hummer and blow it up when they weren't there, of course. However, federal laws forbid such things, and my being in jail would not have improved the situation. I decided that a smoke bomb could accomplish the same result without sending me to jail. The local marine supply store had a large number of emergency smoke bombs. All I had to do was figure out how to ignite one remotely. After a few nights spent in the basement, I finally figured it out using some of the remote-controlled toy car components that Terry had grown out of. I was able to test this device easily, and it worked over 70 meters away. I was proud of myself. The week came to an end. The next week was approaching, and I had to take some more time off from work. The weekend had gone pretty well because I now felt like I was in control of the situation. Things were going to clear up by this time next week. Early Sunday morning, I went to Ray Cotton's apartment complex and discreetly set up my electric flare under his yellow Humvee. All I needed now was the right moment to set it in motion. The next day, I waited for them at the supermarket exit. Instead of going to his house, they headed north. It was easy to discreetly follow them. They seemed so busy with each other that they wouldn't have noticed even if I had been in the fire truck. They drove to Lake Winona, drove around back, and parked in a remote spot. Because of the thick bushes, I had no trouble staying unnoticed. My old binoculars came in handy again as I watched them undress and begin fondling each other. I picked up my cell phone and called Jean. "Hi. Jean, it's John." "Yes, John, I recognize your voice." "Where are you right now?" She was silent for a second, not knowing what to say. She was a terrible liar. "I'm in the supermarket parking lot, John." "Why do you ask?" "Uh-oh. Well, that's good to know, Jean, because in 10 seconds, Ray Cotton's Hummer is going to explode into a big ball of fire. Good thing you're not there." John, what did you say? 10, 9, 8, 7? I heard her hang up. Get out! Get out of the car now! Now! Ray was stunned. What are you talking about? What's going on? She opened the door and jumped out completely naked. Ray followed her and they both ran away from the Humvee. I pressed a button on the remote control. There was a loud pop and orange smoke billowed from underneath the yellow monster truck. They were standing about 15 meters away from the smoking Humvee when I pulled up in the pickup truck. I opened the passenger door and told Jean to get in. I looked at Ray through the window and said, "Next time I'll see you at your funeral." For the entire long drive home, neither of us said a word. When we pulled up to the house, I made her walk from the driveway to the front door without her clothes on. She stood in the middle of the living room, afraid to move or say anything. Finally, I turned my attention to her. "Go take a shower and put something on before the kids got home from school." It was a busy evening. We didn't talk about anything. Jean went to bed, scared to death, and I fell asleep on the couch. Before I left for work, I carried the spring mattress to my truck. When I got home from work, I had 2 single beds and several changes of linens for them. I put the beds together, and Jean quietly put new sheets on them. This went on for almost a week. One evening, when the kids weren't home, Jean got up the courage to talk to me. "John, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?" I didn't say anything but took a second to pull away from reading. She didn't apologize. She didn't make excuses. She didn't whine or whimper. I could tell she was waiting for my response. "My first impulse was to just kill you both. I was furious at what you had done to your family and to me. I had planned to just put 4 sticks of dynamite under his truck, but then I thought about what that would do to the children. They would lose not only their mother, but their father as well. My revenge wasn't worth it. I put a marine flare in there instead of dynamite. I was waiting for you to put an end to it, but you never did. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm still angry, and I fight it every day. I don't know what I'm capable of when I'm in this state." She sat quietly, listening to every word. She didn't say anything and tried not to show any emotion. I continued, "You will stay here in the house and act as mother and wife until both children leave for college. You will perform all the duties of a wife and mother, except for the sexual ones. This includes cooking, cleaning, laundry, shopping, and attending all social events. It should always seem like we are a normal family. Neither of us will say anything to our family or friends about what has happened. I will pay you an allowance of $200 a month for your expenses, and of course all the money you need to run your household. The day Sarah leaves for college will be the day of our divorce. I will give you half the value of the house and half of our savings. I won't pay you alimony. It was like jail time." I don't think she knew what to say. She sat stunned. I assumed she was perplexed as to why I didn't just throw her out and let her go free, or why I was subjecting her to such torture. I continued, "I do it mostly for the children. I want them to have a normal childhood, and I'm not going to let your cheating ruin their lives. I insist on it, Jean. There's nothing to negotiate. I know this is going to sound very harsh, and it will probably be hard for you to accept, but please listen carefully to the last 2 conditions. They are very important." I could tell she was a little worried, but decided she could handle it. "If you leave before your commitment expires, I will hunt you down and kill you. If you have any contact with Ray Cotton, I will hunt you down and kill you both." It was fear and intimidation that I realized was meant to make her agree to this. I had no intention of killing anyone, but I couldn't let her find out. John had fulfilled her part of the contract. For 6 years, she had played the role of dutiful wife and loving mother. I had never once had a complaint about her actions. I hoped that in time she would offer some sort of explanation or apology. I received nothing. There was no remorse on her part. She never said she loved me again, nor did she give any sign of wanting to resume any loving relationship. I was looking for something. I hoped for something. Nothing came. Despite doing all her duties, her attitude never changed, and there was never any further show of affection. I found this a little distressing. About 3 months before the end of our commitment, I was working in Lancaster when I came across an article in the local newspaper. A man named Ray Cotton had been shot and killed in a local motel while making love to another man's wife. I felt some satisfaction reading about it. On a sudden impulse, I took the time and went to the local police station. Ray's Hummer had been towed to the police impound lot where it could be picked up by the next of kin. They gave me the name and phone number of Ray's brother who lived in York. I called him and was able to negotiate the purchase of the Hummer at below market value. He didn't want it, and having to deal with it was a real pain in the ass for him. John was saving money from her account that I had set up for her. What she didn't know was that I was also saving the money that was left over from the household expense fund each month. I figured out how much money it would take to run the household, and if there was anything left over, I set it aside. I took money out of that fund to buy a Hummer. As we approached Jean's last days in our home, she found a small cottage to rent. She had moved some of her belongings into the cottage and was going to take what was left in the car with her when she moved. The night before her last day, I parked the big, ugly yellow Hummer in the driveway of her rented cottage. In the driver's seat, I placed the paperwork of the new car in her name and a copy of the newspaper article about Ray Cotton's passing. I was sure she would be happy to see the Hummer when she arrived at her new home. It was a small thing, but I felt she deserved it. The end.